My name is Mark Evans. I'm a scientist on an unusual mission. I want to hunt down the DNA of the most famous people who ever lived. The aim is to find out who they really were. I'm looking for his body parts.
His body parts?
I'm after the last remains of the greatest artists, scientists, even presidents.
That's Abraham Lincoln's hair, taken the night of the assassination.
That is a bit of Elvis. I'll then extract the DNA and attempt to read their genetic code containing their physical, medical, and behavioural traits. As far as I know, this is all that remains of Brando that we can sequence his DNA from. Could the DNA reveal what made Marilyn Monroe so attractive, Albert Einstein so intelligent, or Adolf Hitler so evil? My mission is no doubt controversial, but I intend to cross this moral minefield and use science to rewrite history. I need to trust you that it is absolutely Adolf Hitler's. On my journey, I'll meet the people already thinking of bringing the dead back to life. You're sort of envisaging a kind of conveyor belt of John Lennon's.
Well, if it works once, it's going to work again, right?
This is the incredible world of dead, famous DNA. It is absolutely mind-blowing. I'm now 2 years into my quest to hunt down the DNA of the dead famous. And there have been some major successes. My scientific team extracted Charles Darwin's genome, the genetic code of life, from just 2 strands of his beard. It revealed his chronic mystery illness. He had Crohn's disease. I then discovered hair claimed to be from Elvis Presley. The science that followed was groundbreaking.
This genome of a dead person that has died a long time ago is the best genome we have ever done.
The genetic code revealed the likely cause of Elvis's early death. He had heart muscle disease. I have one more investigation still in play. I'm attempting to sequence the genome of Adolf Hitler. So far, I've managed to acquire bone and hair claimed to be from Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun. One Hitler hair sample came from disgraced historian David Irving.
That was Hitler.
The other from an anonymous collector of Nazi relics. Both sets of hair share the same provenance, a letter written in 1947 by a barber called Gustav Schumann. But the one David Irving provided was a photocopy. Take a look at that.
Well, there's no question, it's my letter. We got to stop for a second. Now, I can tell you the whole story of this, but it ain't gonna make David Irving look very good.
The barber supposedly applied sticky tape to the sole of his shoe and collected the hair as it fell from the Führer's head. Desperate to find any record of the barber, I'm contacting all the archive offices in Germany and Austria. I got a list of Gustav Schumann's, more than one. A whole bunch of them who were here at the right time and relatively closely matched the profile. But the bad news is there's no one on this list that is a barber. We've got a farmer, an innkeeper, a labourer, bricklayer, blacksmith. shipping clerk, retailer, pretty much everything you could think of, but no barber, apart from there was one guy, Gustav Schumann, who was a guard in a prison camp, signed up member of the Nazi Party, and I suppose there's a possibility that he might have cut hair as a kind of sideline or something. I don't know. My investigation into the provenance of the Hitler hair samples is running cold. I wonder if there's any more Hitler hair for sale with better provenance. One person who might know is the world's largest hair dealer, John Reznikov. I've managed to track down some Adolf Hitler stuff, but I need to authenticate it. You don't have any Hitler in your collection at all, do you?
No, sorry, I don't have any Hitler. But you know what? I do have Eva Braun.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, what have you got of her?
I've got a lock of her hair that came from her own hairbrush that was captured by a U.S. soldier after the end of World War II.
Okay, that's interesting. Eva Braun first met Hitler at 17 years old and soon fell madly in love with him. She was one of many German women that found him irresistible. But Hitler's relationships with women were dark and controlling. He was also rumoured to be a sexual deviant. His previous girlfriend committed suicide, and Eva twice attempted to end her life in a bid for his attention. Concerned it would affect his image as an alpha male, Hitler refused to marry Eva, keeping her hidden away at his Alpine residence, called the Berghof. As the Third Reich crumbled, Eva wanted to be at Hitler's side. In the Führer bunker under Berlin, he finally decided to marry her. 40 hours later, they carried out their suicide pact. She bit into a cyanide capsule. He then shot himself. Eva was 33 years old. So what have you got?
Eva Braun's hair.
In 1945, Paul Beyer, a 7th US Army captain, entered the Berghof, Hitler's Alpine residence, searching for spoils of war. Inside Braun's apartment, he took her personal items, including a hairbrush. Beyer's son later sold Braun's hairbrush to a relic dealer, who separated the hair and sold it to John Reznikov. Don't you feel slightly weird, though, John, handling this stuff?
Well, it's not my favorite thing to buy and sell, but I tell you, you know what? My family are Holocaust survivors. My mother escaped Nazi Germany in 1938, and my step-grandfather escaped Auschwitz. And mostly, it's Jews who collect Holocaust material, mostly. Because we feel we have to preserve it. It's important to preserve. We need to remind people of what happened. I mean, the great moniker of the Holocaust is never again.
What do you think your family, their friends and family, would think about me doing this?
They would understand because they know, the historical aspects are important in knowing, if you had, for instance, Hitler's hair and you found some genetic thing that determined he was a madman, that's important historically. So, I think all these things have their place in our catalog of history.
But I tell you what worries me, and this really does worry me, is that if I find something in his DNA, if I can get his genome,
Right.
and I find something in his DNA like that there's some markers for some kind of madness, that the Jewish community will feel that somehow I'm giving him an excuse for his behaviour.
Just by the genetic makeup of somebody does not give license to commit the heinous acts that were committed by him over the years.
John sells me 8 strands of Eva's hair for $2,000. The DNA inside could authenticate my Eva bone sample and add credibility to the provenance of Hitler's bone. The story behind the hair seems believable. The hairbrush was marked with Eva's monogram and confirmed by experts as hers. Next, I need to find the son of the American officer who sold the brush and get him to verify the hair's provenance. I send Eva's hair to my team of scientists in Belgium. They've also got the Hitler hair samples from the barber Gustav Schumann, the vertebra of Eva Braun, and the rib purported to have come from Adolf Hitler. Surely one of these samples came from Hitler or Braun, and if so, would the DNA tell me anything about who they really were? On the final leg of my quest, I've decided to have one last trawl for dead famous body parts.
So we're saying give peace a chance, you know, like nobody's ever done it before.
Online, I've discovered a tooth belonging to one of our greatest musical legends. What if I can sequence the genome of John Lennon, a musical genius whose life was cut short at the age of 40 when he was shot dead outside his New York apartment? I'm heading to the frozen remote town of Red Deer in northwest Canada to meet Dr. Michael Zook, who claims to have Lennon's tooth. Zook bought it from Lennon's housekeeper, who was given it in the 60s. Although if Lennon had anticipated the consequences, he may have thought twice about dishing out his decaying body parts. So here's an interesting question. Why would a 49-year-old average dentist from a small town in the middle of Alberta in Canada be prepared to pay $30,000 for a rotten old molar that allegedly belonged to John Lennon? What is his game? Wow, that is a rotten tooth there, isn't it?
It's not the prettiest one you'll see, but it's probably the most valuable one.
Wow. When you went to buy it and you knew you were going to bid for it, what did you have in your head that you were going to do with it?
Well, I knew that there was a chance that there'd be some DNA in the tooth, even though the publication said that it was too fragile to be tested. So
It specifically said that, did it?
That's right. So I think, you know, people weren't thinking about the DNA story as much as I was, and if there is enough DNA to sequence it, it could be basically genetic real estate. My goal is to own John Lennon's DNA.
Wow. That's a pretty big vision, isn't it?
Well, it's a small vision also. It's quite small.
But the
genome.
Can you own John Lennon? Really?
I think I can, because of the laws. Depends where you do these things. If it can't be done in one country, you can do these things in another.
So you can do it here?
I believe so.
What do you think this is all potentially worth?
It must be worth millions of dollars.
Millions?
To have John Lennon's DNA sequence outside of the family protection, to me, full access to it is worth millions.
How do you feel about letting me have some of the tooth to be able to do what I want to do?
Well, what I want to do first is, of course, protect myself and my rights with an agreement so that we know how far you're going with it.
My plan would be to sequence the whole of the genome and then explore elements of the genome that are interesting from a historical perspective of John's life. Allow and invite the living family members to be able to have complete access to the whole genome if they want to, their choice. But obviously it's not part of my game at all to think of the monetary value in it. And that's what if you said, yes, I can have some of the DNA from this tooth, that's what I would want to do with it. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm just not prepared to share it in such a way that allows free access. And so, you know, if you're not ready to be exposed to, you know, some restricted agreement, then I guess we can't really work together on this project.
Could Lennon's tooth really be worth millions? Zook used the words genetic real estate, suggesting our genes could have value and be traded like commodities after death. Perhaps in the future people would pay to genetically engineer their offspring with the musical genes of John Lennon, or the intelligence of Einstein, or the artistic talent of Picasso. So, no luck with John Lennon's molar, but there's a chance to get my hands on another famous tooth. I'm about to meet businessman Michael Cronick.
Michael, Mark, how are you? Good.
He started buying and selling celebrity memorabilia at the age of 13 and became America's biggest relic dealer.
These are incredible.
Yeah, those are original Warhol Marylands.
And is that real?
Yes.
I mean, well, real, but is that
It's
absolutely authenticated?
It's authentic. Many years ago, I bought the estate of Marvin Gaye. Included in the lot of stuff were the actual pants that he was wearing when his father shot and killed him. That, for instance, had blood on it that I know for a fact came from him, from the gunshot.
What happened to that?
I sold them, yeah, for quite a bit of money.
Michael then reveals he has a body part of Hollywood star Marlon Brando.
Did I get it directly out of his mouth? No, but the source that I got it from assures me that this is Brando's tooth. This is probably, to my knowledge, as close as you're gonna get to a body part.
Potentially, I want to be able to take the tooth out of this.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what, with gold going to $2,000 an ounce right now, and my family being in the metal and gold business, I'll make you a deal. You can take the tooth part out if you return the gold to me.
A tooth from Hollywood legend Marlon Brando, one of the greatest actors in history. Back at my hotel, I'm taking a closer look at the relic. I'm not sure if there's enough tooth to extract DNA. As far as I'm aware, this is all that's left of Marlon Brando that we can sequence his DNA from. Because when he died, he was cremated and his ashes were split between Tahiti and Death Valley. It's interesting because Brando was fascinated by genetics. He was a seriously flawed character, a depressive, aggressive womanizer, and he just wanted to know whether the key to understanding his behaviour and the man he was down to the way he was brought up, or whether he was born that way. And the reality is that the answer to that question could well lie inside this tooth. There seems to be small pieces of cracked tooth within the gold cap, so I'll send it straight to the lab and hope there's enough DNA to reveal what made Brando who he was. On my quest to hunt down dead famous DNA, I've had a setback. Marlon Brando's tooth didn't contain enough DNA to learn anything about him. So I decide to have one last attempt at getting my hands on John Lennon's tooth. But I discover Dr. Zook has big plans. Is this a quote from you? The DNA in John Lennon's tooth, it actually is priceless if it means we can clone the Beatle.
He could be looked at as my son, but I don't think I would be the one that would be, owning his property. He would have the rights when he was old enough to make a claim.
But how would you make sure that John Lennon Jr. ended up an international celebrity, songwriter, rock star, and not a dentist like your own son?
It would still be his exact duplicate, but, hopefully keep him away from drugs and cigarettes and that kind of thing. But, guitar lessons wouldn't hurt anybody, right?
It strikes me that if John Lennon Jr. version 1 doesn't work out as planned, he doesn't quite turn into the John Lennon you had in mind, would you then just kind of, as it were, knock off another one?
Well, if it works once, it's going to work again, right?
So the phrase, Dr. Zook, that comes to mind is, if at first you don't succeed, clone and clone again.
I guess that could apply quite well.
Now, Dr. Zook, there are some people who might say that you've been sniffing too much anaesthetic gas in your dental surgery.
Well, I could understand that this is a controversial subject. This is just another way of looking at eternal life, and the idea of thinking that you're going to go to heaven. Maybe there is no heaven. Maybe this is the new heaven.
Is Dr. Zook's scheme to produce a factory line of Lennon clones that preposterous? I wonder how far are we from creating genetically identical human copies?
Dolly is unique. The first ever sheep, indeed the first ever mammal to be born a clone of her mother.
The first cloned mammal was created in 1996. Geneticists now believe the technology to clone a human is almost there. But the science is shrouded in controversy, so much so that human cloning is banned in most countries.
Human cloning is deeply troubling to me and to most Americans. Life is a creation, not a commodity.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
In 2002, a UFO religious cult known as the Raelians claimed to have cloned a woman in a secret laboratory in Bermuda, calling the baby Eve. It attracted worldwide attention.
Science fiction has become a reality, according to an American company called Clonaid.
I'm very, very pleased to announce that the first baby clone is born.
The Raelians pursue cloning in their bid for immortality. Keen to know more about their clandestine cloning operation, I've managed to persuade their chief scientist, Dr. Brigitte Boiselier, to meet me. You're the only you're the only scientist who's claimed I've actually succeeded in doing it. So how is that?
I'm the only one who said she did,
Oh, hello. So you think there may be others?
But it's not that complicated.
But you're pretty sure there are other people cloning?
I'm pretty sure, yeah. I'm pretty sure.
When was the first clone made?
So the first one was born in December 2002, if I remember well.
Do you keep in touch by Twitter or Facebook or anything?
No, we don't do very direct communication because the parents requested that they are protected that way. And I do that with all the children who have been born this way.
All the children? How many have you cloned?
I'm not giving any number. It doesn't matter.
Wouldn't it be very good for your cause if you actually said, look, we've been doing it since 2002. Here are all these really happy, healthy children that we've produced. Look at the evidence. There you go. Don't be frightened of it. Speak to these people. They can tell you about their experience. That's the bit I really struggle with.
But it's a human being story, you know. And so my credibility was damaged, but the life of the child was preserved. And I think, you know, I had to choose.
Dr. Boiselier seems to have all the answers. But is it the truth? And what if the Raelians got hold of my dead famous DNA? Do you think, at the moment or any time soon, it would be possible to clone somebody like Hitler?
Absolutely. If I were given the DNA of Hitler, I could produce a baby with the same physical appearance, but not the same, you know, mentality and personality. Luckily, you know, but one day it will be possible to really transfer both the DNA and the personality into your body. I think that's the way to become eternal.
The scientific community are skeptical of the Raelians' claim to have produced a human clone, but whether it's true or not, it will soon be possible. And if I do manage to sequence Hitler's genome, I definitely don't want it falling into the wrong hands and be responsible for reintroducing him to the world. I need to prove that all my dead famous body parts are authentic. One way to do this is by investigating their provenance. The story behind Hitler and Braun's bones is compelling, but complicated. They were given to me by an anonymous collector of Nazi relics.
These were vertebrae and a bone of Hitler and Eva Braun.
The collector bought them from an American called Harold Shigley, who in 1986 travelled to the Russian island of Sakhalin to buy the bones from a retired KGB officer on a fishing trip. Shigley apparently died in 1987, but I hired a private detective to dig up what he could about him. So what did you find?
Well, after a lot of digging, database searches, calling sources, just basically doing a traditional skip trace, I found nothing. I found shit. Based on the ages that you gave me, and the name's not that common to begin with.
He doesn't exist?
Does not exist.
Are you absolutely sure about that?
I am absolutely sure Harold Shigley does not exist.
No trace of Harold Shigley doesn't necessarily mean the bones are fake. Perhaps this dealer used a false name. He was trading in Nazi relics, after all. But there are two other names and telephone numbers that came with the bones. Arnie Raphael, an American diplomat who allegedly set up the meeting between Shigley and the KGB officer, did exist. That is, until 1988.
President Zia-ul-Haq of Pakistan was killed today when an explosion tore apart his plane 10 minutes after takeoff. So too was the United States Ambassador Arnold Raphael and an American Brigadier General Herbert Wassam. There were no survivors.
Along with Arnie Raphael is a Russian name, written in Cyrillic. I've had that translated and it's Mitrokin is the name. And then amazingly, I did a bit of digging and this story cropped up in the Times from Thursday, January the 29th, 2004. Page 12, in the news, this headline, Defector who threw open KGB archive dies at 81, and his name, Vasily Mitrokhin. He made an exploratory trip to Sakhalin in the Far East. So everything is beginning to fit. Now, the more you read it and the more you look at this stuff, the more you begin to think that maybe, just maybe, it could actually be true. Another way to prove my relics are authentic is to extract the DNA and match it with a DNA swab from a living relative. In every cell of our bodies, we have 23 pairs of chromosomes that contain our DNA. 2 chromosomes define our sex. If you have 2 X chromosomes, you're female. If you have X and Y, you're male. The Y chromosome passes from father to son almost unchanged. This means male ancestry can be traced back through the generations. If I can get a swab from a living male relative of Hitler, I'll be able to compare his Y chromosome to that extracted from my Hitler bone sample. But it isn't going to be easy. After the war, lots of his relatives went underground. They changed their names to things like Hitler, Hiedler, Heidler. Not very imaginative changes, I grant you, but they wanted to change their names because they wanted to disassociate themselves from Adolf. But I have managed to get a family tree of Adolf's immediate family, and it proves really, really interesting. Few of these people are still alive, of course, and of those that are, there's a big group down here who have made a pact never to have children because they felt it a responsibility to end Adolf's genetic line. Pretty powerful stuff. Of the others that are still alive, none of them will even speak to me. But there is one bloke here who is genetically linked to Adolf Hitler through his Y chromosome. And he said that he will give me a DNA sample so long as he remains anonymous. So, if there's a DNA match on the Y chromosome between this anonymous donor and the hair and bone samples, I've got Adolf Hitler. One way or the other, I'm about to find out from my team of Belgian scientists the Hitler and Braun results. I'm waiting for a member of my Belgian scientific team to return from Austria with a DNA swab from an anonymous relative of Adolf Hitler. I'm hoping this will finally prove I have Adolf Hitler's bones. Next, the scientists will compare the relative swab to the Y chromosome extracted from the bone. If it matches, the bone is Adolf Hitler's, taken from his unmarked grave outside the Führer bunker in Berlin. All I could do is wait for the results. "3 years into my quest to sequence the genomes of the dead famous, and it's time for my final set of results.
So this first sample then, which was the Adolf Hitler hair, alleged hair, on the sellotape that was underneath the barber's shoe, what did you discover?
I returned to the lab in Belgium for the DNA results of my Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun relics.
Should I deal with David Irving? Can I trust him?
DNA extracted from the hair, claimed by David Irving to be Adolf Hitler's, revealed it was more likely to come from a man from the Indian subcontinent than the Rhineland.
But it certainly doesn't match with any of the others?
No.
Okay.
Irving's provenance was a photocopy of a letter from Hitler's so-called Austrian barber, Gustav Schumann, but I could find no record of him in the German and Austrian archives. My conclusion? It's highly unlikely it's Hitler's hair. The hair from the anonymous relic collector, also claimed to be from Gustav Schumann, was in fact a wig.
What do you think of that? So is it human?
Yes, this bone is definitely human.
DNA extracted from the broken rib bone, supposedly stolen from Adolf Hitler's grave, did not match the DNA swab from one of his relatives.
There's no relation.
No, completely different.
No.
So what could the DNA from the vertebra and rib tell us about their origins?
We were able to get mitochondrial DNA profiles for both of the samples. In addition, we were able to get partial autosomal STR profiles from them.
Both samples were human bone, but both were male, probably a boy. The source? Most likely the Indian subcontinent. One theory is they're part of a black market trade in medical skeletons, using corpses stolen from graves and funeral pyres. It explains the charring on the bones. I'll never know for sure who these bones belong to, but it certainly wasn't Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun. I'd been spun an elaborate story. The disgruntled KGB officer, the US diplomat, a mysterious relic dealer, and the secret meeting on Sakhalin Island. If only it was true. But the DNA doesn't lie.
Okay, so finally then, the hair sample from the hairbrush.
All the roads seemed dead ends, nothing more than shaggy dog stories. But there was one sample left, the hair from Eva Braun's hairbrush. I didn't really expect to learn anything from Eva's hair, but the DNA revealed something truly remarkable. Next, I had to ensure the hair came from Eva's head. For definitive proof, I needed a DNA swab from one of Eva's female descendants. There are 2 left alive. Both refused. The only way left to authenticate the hair sample was to further investigate the provenance. It seemed credible, but there was one missing link. I had to track down the son of the American officer who allegedly entered Hitler's Alpine residence at the end of World War II and took Eva's vanity case, including her monogrammed hairbrush. After 2 weeks of searching, I found the son living in the suburbs of Chicago.
My father came back from the war, and in our basement, I remember there was a duffel bag. And in the duffel bag, there were several Nazi ceremonial daggers and a human skull, and this case with the initials in gold, EB. And we opened it up, looked at it, and was a mirror and a hairbrush. Just was a cosmetic box in a duffel bag that he brought from Hitler's home.
So then, what did your dad tell you about how he got hold of it?
Well, he was a German-born Jew, came to America in 1929, and because of his background, he was in the CIC, which was the forerunner of the CIA, and he was allowed to go to these places. He was there. Here are the pictures that prove he was there.
Where were these taken then?
These were taken at the Alpine Retreat, which is what, the Berghof?
This is your dad here, is it?
Yes.
I mean, this is extraordinary. Hitler's home. It's got graffiti on it, on the house and whatever, isn't it? Do we have a date or anything on these? So that's August 1945. This one has got Hitler's tunnel. It seems his father was there at the right place, at the right time, and had the photos to prove it. What's that one? On Hitler's terrace,
right.
August 1945. Gosh, it must have been extraordinary for him, though, your dad, being Jewish,
right,
and knowing what Hitler had done, and being there in his house.
And he wouldn't talk about it unless you brought it up. His family was torn apart being there, and he was a stoic kind of guy. And especially when he'd go to the concentration camps looking for his family, his mother and 2 sisters. So he had tasted it all.
Whilst he was in Germany at the end of the war, then, he was also looking for his
when
family.
When the concentration camps were liberated, he was allowed to go into them as soon as he got there. His mother and 2 sisters were taken to the camps, and that was the last time he found, and he never found them.
These other pictures, then, what are these from?
These are all pictures that he took when he arrived in the camp.
So these are his copies of his photographs.
Yes.
So this is him.
That's him.
Gosh, these are shocking, aren't they?
Yes, they are. Incredible.
God, I mean, how could you cope with
the question
seeing this stuff when it's your family?
Right. I just think you have to get over the emotional aspects of it, and now what's left is her hair. And that can be used for science and history, and that's more important than sitting there being upset about the hair being there, you know? What good is that going to do?
The son's story was moving, and his father's motive seemed innocent. He wasn't looking to profit from Eva's possessions, but simply took them as keepsakes of the war. So, based on the provenance, it's very likely this hair sample is from Eva Braun. And the science told us something unexpected, something quite extraordinary. There was a sequence within the DNA that's known to be passed down the maternal line unchanged, from mother to daughter, from generation to generation. It's a specific sequence that's shared by millions, but it's also a sequence of DNA that's only shared by Ashkenazi Jews. "80% of the world's Jewish population are Ashkenazi. They are descendants of medieval Jews that lived in Central Europe, having first settled in the Rhineland. Eva wouldn't have known. Hitler couldn't have known. Her ancestors probably converted to Catholicism a century or so before, as was common. But ethnically, if that's her hair, on her hairbrush, Eva was Jewish. If it's her DNA, it seems the last thing Adolf Hitler did before committing suicide was marry a Jew. The man responsible for the murder of millions of Jews, who thought they were somehow inferior, who thought they should all be exterminated, was himself, without realizing, in love with a Jewish woman. If this is the hair of Eva Braun, then this result must surely be the final nail in the coffin of Nazi ideology. What a thought-provoking outcome. I never dreamt I'd find such a potentially extraordinary and profound result. Racism and fascism, ideas that one racial group is superior to another, made a mockery of by studying dead, famous DNA.